What's your best "I've messed with the wrong person" moment? In 7th grade, I grew from 5 feet 2 inches to 5 feet 9 inches within a span of 8 months. I went from being of average height to looking over the heads of 85% of my classmates. Never really got picked on, but now I had a sudden confidence that I could take on anyone that messed with me, and I was for the most part correct. One day, my older brother, whom is 7 years my senior, but only 5 feet 8 inches, and I got into it, and I finally physically stood up to him. I took a full-fledged swing with all of my weight in it. Didn't faze him, he just got mad. He put me in a full Nelson, slammed me into the hallway wall face first, then proceeded to use his chin to dig it into my neck for near a minute. I was crying and almost passed out. Right after my swing, I distinctly remember thinking, fuck, he's going to murder me in our parents' basement. TLDR, hit puberty, got overconfident. Older brother reminded me that I was just a really tall 13-year-old. Not me, but a friend I was traveling with. When I was 20, we were in a DCA drum corps for the summer, on our way to a show in PA or something. We had stopped at a Wendy's to eat. While we were there, a group of bikers, obviously part of a club, came in the same Wendy's to eat. They sat behind us. My friend decided to try to hit me with his straw paper. His attempt went right past me and hit a biker in the back of the head. We go dead silent, waiting for a reaction. Nothing. We let out a deep sigh of relief and continue eating. As we are heading out the door, my friend decides to use the bathroom. I wait for him on the bus. A few minutes later, he comes flying out of the Wendy's, red-faced and looking terrified. Apparently, a biker had met him in the bathroom, cornered him and explained, "I'm the nice kind of biker, so I'm going to let you off with a warning, but be aware that many bikers would be kicking your ass right now. Get out of here." That was the end of shooting straw paper. You should have apologized instead of pretending it didn't happen. Then there wouldn't have been an issue. But you made it an issue by ignoring the situation. When I was 14, my brother, one of my longtime mentors and heroes, took me to NYC for my birthday. He was 29 at the time and was on leave from the military. He had left 1st Ranger Battalion and just finished the Army Special Forces Q course, Green Beret. By all accounts, he was and still is a bad mama jamma. He is incredibly quiet and soft-spoken and very gentle. We were on the subway headed to Times Square, and I was standing next to him, both of us holding a vertical rail in the train. From the next compartment, a group of young urban troubadours were passing roughly through the crowd and shoulder-bumping people to get through. When they bumped into my brother, it was like waves crashing into a rock. They eyed him, and the leader of the group said something along the lines of, "Who the fuck are you? Are you supposed to be tough or something?" To which my brother calmly responded, "Actually, I am tough. If you care to find out for yourselves, let's wait until we're off the train. I'd hate to leave a mess in here." They made the wise choice of leaving at the next stop. I'll share a story from the perspective of the guy you shouldn't fuck with. My little brother and I pull into a parking lot, and another car is coming at us from the opposite direction and was drifting into my lane a little bit. My bro reaches across the seat and honks my horn for me, and the car moves back over, slams on the brakes, does a quick turn, and starts tailing me as I park. I pick a spot, and the car stops in the lane behind me, and this dude gets out of the car with a super angry scowl and starts heading over to my door like he's got a problem. I look at my bro and go, "Way to go, dumbass," and step out, and the dude stops dead in his tracks when he realizes I'm basically a monster at almost 7 tall and 300 plus pounds. He doesn't even say anything and just dips back into his car and peels out, and my brother and I start laughing our asses off. Then I hit him for touching my horn. The dude stops dead in his tracks when he realizes I'm basically a monster. I seriously thought I was about to read about how you wanted $3.50 from him. Different kind of story. At work I had a chessboard and would play with various people during lunch. None of us were particularly great or anything. It was just a fun diversion. One day, one of my coworkers came up, an older woman who was always very sweet and quiet, and asked if I wanted to play a game. She destroyed me. Like it wasn't even a close game. Towards the end, I would make a move, and she would just say, in the sweetest tone possible, "Oh, are you sure you want to make that move?" Destroyed. Turned out she had actually competed in some chess tournaments when she was younger, and both of her sons were active competitors. Was working a NASA grant SBR many years ago. Got paid, closed the grant, plus 2 frustrating and hassleful would not do again. Literally a year later, got a phone call from a NASA grant admin who wanted some more paperwork. I said I was done with the grant, go away. Admin said, "Well, I won't pay you until you complete this paperwork." Me, "You've already paid me." Admin, "Huh, well if you don't give me the paperwork we'll pay you again." Thought about it for a moment, told him that the paperwork would be there in a few business days. Edit. Thanks to /u/mean-comp-poop for the suggestion. Think of the worst bureaucracy you've ever had to deal with. Unless you already selected NASA, NASA is probably worse. Now think of the hassle of dealing with a double payment. You don't get to keep the money. You get to go through some tortuous, potentially expensive process of getting the money returned, your books cleared up, or face civil and criminal penalties. Paperwork blizzard, maybe a year of hassle. Admin knew exactly what he was saying, and so did I. As an arrogant 14-year-old, I was at Sky Zone, a recreational place with a lot of trampolines. I was in the dodgeball section, and I told a 20-something man that was the #1 person on my people to get out list. This man was put on the other team, and he was a very athletic man. He proceeded to hurl these rubber dodgeballs at what seemed like the speed of sound as he eliminated my entire team 3 games in a row, saving me for last each game. Every time he got me alone, he hit me in the dick in front of all my friends. I should not have messed with him. It happened during Navy A school. This guy Joe grew up in Brooklyn and spent much of his time boxing to stay off the streets. He was of Puerto Rican descent. He began flirting with a very pretty young lady of African American heritage. This did not sit well with some of the other young sailors attending this fine school. One day, he and I are exiting the mess hall, and 3 guys jump him. I try to help him, and he tells me this is not my fight. Joe beat the shit out of all 3 guys. One guy had a fractured orbital, and he broke ribs on another guy. I stood by and did nothing. I didn't need to. I never saw anything like it. TLDR, don't mess with Joe. Edit, change onto 1. A high school friend and his buddies were drunkenly throwing snowballs at cars from an elevated bluff above a fairly busy street. Apparently, one of his victims took exception, looped around, and parked. He approached them from behind and took one swing at my friend with a machete. One of his friends warned him, so he was able to raise his arm. He happened to be wearing 2 leather jackets at the time, so the machete only cut halfway through his arm right below the elbow. Had he not been warned, it would have been his neck. Afterwards, the attacker, described to me as an old Filipino-looking dude, walked back to his car, drove away, never to be seen again. We were in a traffic jam. A car was trying to force his way in front of us. They rode up on the shoulder and then wanted into our lane, but my husband was feeling surly and not letting the car in. They forced their way in, so my husband laid on the horn and yelled. 3 guys hopped out of the car. The driver had a baseball bat. I screamed out the window that we were sorry. They yelled at my husband to get out of the car. My husband apologized and they called him some names and then went back to their car. We then had to sit in traffic behind them for the next 20 minutes. I got pretty big in high school fairly quickly. Went from about 5 feet 8 inches to 6 feet 2 inches in a year. I'd always heard that everyone tries to fight their dad once in their teenage years, and I was no exception. My dad is about 8 inches shorter than me, and we got into an argument about chores or something equally as retarded, and I decided to go in for the kill. I shoved him once pretty hard and put my fists up for a brawl. Before I knew what was happening, I was suspended about a foot off the ground by my throat and was receiving a verbal beating like I had never known. That was the last time I ever tried to fight my dad. TLDR, don't fuck with old man strength, it's real. My dad has a great story from when he was stationed in Japan during Nam. He was at a bar drinking sake out of a huge ceramic jug and hitting on a pretty girl. Then a sumo wrestler walks in. Immediately, every female in the place drops everything to fawn over him. Dad's pissed that the sumo wrestler stole his prospect, so he smashes his sake bottle over the back of the guy's head. Instead of being knocked out as intended, the sumo wrestler just slowly turns and smiles at my dad. Then he picks him up, carries him over to the toilet, which in this establishment is essentially a hole in the ground, and stuffs him in there up to his neck. Finally, a story I can tell. I'll start by saying I'm 6 feet tall and weighed about 150 pounds at the time. It was my senior year of high school. I was cutting weight for a wrestling tournament, and to get my mind away from the misery, I decided to go downtown with my friends one night. We went to this bar, and after a little while, if I took a morning run, I could get a small cup of orange juice, my favorite kind of juice, and a small treat. I get my juice and sip it while I hang out with my friends. Suddenly, this big bouncer, probably about 6 feet 3 inches and around 260, walks up to me and begins questioning what's in my cup. I told him it was orange juice. Apparently, he didn't believe me, grabbed my cup, and threw it in a garbage can. I was pissed because he had taken my liquid gold and tossed it, and as he reached his arm out to grab me, take me out, I grabbed his arm and hip-tossed him onto his back, knocking the wind out of him. Then I walked out of the bar. Don't mess with my orange juice. Very loosely related, but me and my friends are avid gamers and we're playing some Team Fortress 2. He left to get some applesauce. The two of us are both fairly skilled at the game, but nothing major. He was killed while he was getting his applesauce multiple times. When he came back, he went into a server-clearing rage and proceeded to demolish the opposing team like no tomorrow, all while screaming over the chat, "You want my applesauce? Well, you can't have it." I was stunned. Turns out he always played his roles he was bad at, so the games would stay close, and he could have fun. Throwaway time, since the guy in the story is a Redditor. My buddy is a big dude, 6 feet 1 inch and over 250 pounds. He's overweight in the same sense that so are NFL defensive linemen, i.e., he could probably bench press op small. For the most part, he's a giant teddy bear, super laid back and smokes a lot of pot. Until this, the angriest Eve ever seen him as mildly irritated. A group of us are at a local bar sitting on the potty eye one night when a group of drunk guys walks by and gropes my buddy's girlfriend. Before anyone can stop him, he has the guy by the hair and is smashing him face first into the picnic table. He then proceeds to throw him to the ground, jumps on 2 of him, and starts strangling him with his bare hands. It took 4 people to pull him off the guy. We finally have my buddy restrained, and the other guy has been helped off and let out. My buddy takes a deep breath and just says in his normal tone, "I'm cool. Somebody give me a cigarette." TLDR. For certain actions, the consequences are swift and severe. I was friends with a girl who was only 4 feet 11 inches at 17. Her father was a judo instructor, so she'd been learning forever. She was in a competition and had to enter one weight class up due to lack of entries. The opponent was a girl at the top of that weight class, older, much taller, and just generally bigger than she was. She got this girl down in an arm-lock submission hold, but she refused to submit, so my friend just kept adding the pressure. The referee was right there asking her if she wanted to tap out too, but she wouldn't. Crack went her shoulder, broken in 2 places. When I was 20, I tried to mess with my father. I've been taking martial arts for a few years and figured I could get my father in an arm lock. I'm 6'5" and 250 pounds, while my father was 5 inches shorter and around 40 pounds lighter, so I figured how hard could it be? Well, he was in the kitchen, so I started to try and get him into a lock when he decided his youngest son needed to be shown who was in charge. He grabbed a hold of my hand and just crushed my fingers in his grip. I was wearing a ring, and the feeling my fingers crushing together in his grip made my mind blank, and I quickly remembered that, while my father had no fight training, he did spend most of his life on a farm wrangling oxen, and so had an iron grip. Needless to say, I tries not to cross him after that. Back when I was in 4th or 5th grade, my friends and I used to wrestle on the school bus. We had this ancient lady for a bus driver, and she either didn't care or didn't notice. Well, I was the reigning champion, and would even take my friends on 2 versus 1 and win. One day, there's a new kid on the bus, a small Asian boy. On the way home, I sit in a seat next to him, and I say something along the lines of, "If you're gonna ride my bus, you gotta wrestle me." Well, this small little Asian boy hooped my ass the whole ride home. After that, we included him into our group of friends. I wonder what he's up to these days. So I'm an EMT. We pick up this belligerently drunk, like mid-20s male from the side of the road. I generally don't like being in the back of an ambulance with a dude bigger and more violent than I am, so I'll ask for a cop to ride in the back on occasion. So dude was big, tattooed up, a real meathead, and wanted to fight someone. So I asked for a police ride along. I get this 5'1" woman who must weigh 120 pounds soaking wet. We start riding toward the MTF, and he is just getting even more ridiculous. So as I'm trying to calm this guy a bit, this woman steps up and tells the guy to sit down and let me do my job. He doesn't like getting bossed around by homegirl, so he starts yelling and trying to get off the gurney. She just put up her hand and said she would tase him if she got to 3. He stands up, takes a step forward, and she just says 3. No countdown, no warning. The look of horror in this guy's eyes as he realized what was about to happen was totally worth a grown man pissing himself in my rig. I request her all the time now. Friends and I decided to hide in the ditch by my driveway, and when cars drove by an average of 50 miles per hour, throw water balloons at them. Well, we hit a ram like 85,000. We see after impact his brake lights, and he starts to slow as he comes to the end of the road where he could keep going. He turns around. We scatter. I was fat and out of shape, so I decide to test my maneuvering skills and hide behind a tree. This truck goes by my driveway, like 4 times super slow, then pulls halfway up my driveway, which is about 100 yards, and stops. Car door opens. It's so cold you can see your breath, so I am hiding behind a tree, maybe 15 yards away, trying to breath as little as possible. He gets in his car, backs down, and checks one more time if he can see us before leaving. I played out how that scenario could have gone, and I definitely messed with the wrong person who just so happened to give up. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.